Hello, my name is Troy Eller English, and I am the archivist for the Society of Women Engineers, here at the Walter P. Reuther Library of Labor and Urban Affairs at Wayne State University in beautiful Midtown Detroit. This is part 2 of a virtual tour of the Reuther Library and SWE's archives. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, you should. You'll learn about the wonderful collections here at the Reuther Library, documenting the history of the American labor movement and metropolitan Detroit. You'll also learn how SWE's archives came to be and how they came to be here. And you'll hear a 1957 audio recording of engineering pioneer Lillian Moeller Gilbreth, recalling the time that she politely told off a newspaper reporter, and that is definitely worth listening to. If you did watch part 1, welcome back. We left off in the audiovisual department on the 3rd floor. Now, let's head down the hall to the map cases, where there's some really fun things. This is where I keep SWE's posters and other items that are too large to fit in a box. This is a wonderful 1952 poster from the Pittsburgh section, advertising an outreach event for high school girls. You'll see that it has a slide rule and a container of face powder in the upper left-hand corner. This is the banquet photo from the first International Conference of Women Engineers and Scientists in 1964. I'll talk more about ICWS in just a bit, but just take a moment to think about the women in this photograph. Statistically, they were probably the only woman engineer at their company, and they would have had to have fought hard to get and keep that position in a society that expected them to be housewives. And here they are in 1964 at the first ICWS conference, with more than 500 other women from around the world who had to fight just as hard to get that degree and to get that job. And they look so happy. This photograph was tightly rolled up in a tube when we received it, and it was badly curled. I made a humidity chamber to slowly relax the paper backing so that the emulsion wouldn't crack when I flattened it, and thankfully I was successful. Dr. Bonnie Dunbar is a SWE senior member and the recipient of both the Society's Resnick Challenger Medal and its Achievement Award. Currently a professor, earlier in her career she flew into space as a NASA astronaut. And after 2 of her space flights, she donated these posters with her mission patches attached to SWE. She had originally given the poster commemorating her 1998 mission to the SWE Los Angeles section, to which she had close ties. Last year, it was handed off to me at the WE 19 conference to be added to SWE's archives. I usually pack light, but I had to bring a suitcase big enough to safely transport the poster back to the archives. The American flag attached to it traveled with Dunbar in space. There's a lot of cool stuff in this building, but I'm the only archivist here whose collection has been to space. SWE's paper-based collections are in our regular storage stacks, as well as its collection of publications, books, and artifacts, like pins, buttons, and other three-dimensional objects. We have to keep the temperature and humidity controlled, and all of our stacks are locked. It's not like a library, where members of the public can wander around and pull things off the shelves. Instead, they look at finding aids, which are basically inventories of the processed collection. The finding aid lists the folder titles, which hopefully gives researchers a good sense of what kind of documents or information might be found inside of those folders. And there's some really cool things in these folders. This box is small but mighty. It's from the American Society of Women Engineers and Architects, also known as Asuya. In 1919, Hilda Counts and Lou Alta Melton, two female engineering students at the University of Colorado, sent letters to every college in the United States with an engineering or architecture department, trying to identify any women who had studied engineering or architecture in the United States up to 1919. Some of the letters were rather brusque or incredulous, but others were quite supportive and informative, and in the end they were able to identify 139 women who had studied engineering or architecture in the United States up to that point, although they didn't all complete their degrees. Using the names they found in the survey, Counts and Melton tried to found the American Society of Women Engineers and Architects, although there's no evidence that it persisted past 1920. However, Hilda Counts Edgecombe and Asuya's treasurer, Hazel Quick, later joined the Society of Women Engineers 30-some-odd years later. SWE's founding meeting happened 70 years ago, on May 27th and 28th, 1950, at the Cooper Union's Green Engineering Camp, which SWE members fondly called Camp Green. We know what happened at that meeting because the Founders and Archives Committee saved the meeting program, a list of the founding members and attendees, and minutes from the business meetings. Camp Green was sold several decades ago, and the road names have changed. But using this hand-drawn map from the registration packet, I was able to pinpoint its location in what is currently Ringwood State Park in New Jersey, if you want to take a road trip. Of course, we have meeting minutes from almost all of the board meetings. I studiously avoided them for the first several years, but I've learned that they can actually be pretty fun. These are minutes from October 1950. Beatrice Hicks was the president, and she wrote a script for herself to lead the meeting. There's different ways to interpret that. Possibly, the script demonstrates that she was a very staid and organized professional, and that tracks with what I know about her. Or, possibly, the previous meeting went terribly awry, and she was trying to get the conversation back on track and maintain control. That also tracks with what I know about some of the personalities at play. These minutes from 1958 are very important because of an event that happened at the 1957 National Convention, as they were called back then. Yvonne Young Clark joined SWE in 1952. Becoming the Society's first African American member, and she was very active in SWE throughout her career. In 1957, SWE's National Convention was held in Houston, and Jim Crow laws promoting racial segregation were in effect. SWE leaders informed the hotel ahead of time that the Society was integrated, and that a black member would be attending the convention. The hotel said that was fine, until Yvonne Clark arrived at the front desk. It refused to honor her room reservation or let her attend the convention inside. SWE's president at the time, Mickey Gurla, threatened the hotel that she would cancel the convention on the spot. But Yvonne didn't want to disrupt the other members' experience. Instead, they reached a compromise of sorts. Yvonne would stay with an aunt that lived in the area. She could come into the hotel and attend the convention meetings, but she had to be accompanied by a white SWE member at all times. In her SWE oral history interview, Yvonne fondly recalled SWE members engaging in civil disobedience, escorting Clark in through the front doors in the morning and parading her throughout the hotel all day, ensuring that she was seen by managers and guests alike.
And they sent me over to the hotel, recommended a segregated hotel, black, and that's when I called my aunt. I said, I'm here for the Women Engineers Convention, but don't have a place to stay right now. She said, okay, I'll come get you. So the convention and the hotel compromised, and I was met at the front door every day to go to the convention, and I was let out at the front door every night, and I got picked up by my aunt and uncle. But we had a ball. Anytime anybody wanted some cigarettes, they came and found me, and we walked. Because as long as I had a person with me, I could move around the hotel, but I had to be accompanied at all times, from the front door back to the front door. So I've been to the newsstand and coffee shop. We went everywhere that 1 week. Mm-hmm. We had a ball. And I did go to some of the meetings because I had to. But
I had heard many people tell this story and state that SWE refused to hold another convention south of the Mason-Dixon line until the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. However, until last year, I hadn't found any evidence that it was a policy intentionally set by the society. I was reading through the 1958 board meeting minutes last year, looking for something completely unrelated, when I finally spotted this policy buried in the minutes from August 1958, more than a year after the incident. The policy reads, Segregation. The Southern sections should be allowed to have the National Convention. The sections must provide equal accommodations for colored members and ensure that no colored member is subjected to unpleasantness or embarrassment in attending meetings. And at that same meeting, the board also approved convention policies requiring that invocations and prayers be non-denominational, and that the convention meals should meet religious dietary restrictions. I did more searching and found a convention procedures manual from 1963, tucked away in a folder of office procedures, in which the word colored had been smudged out and replaced with the word all, which was either a recognition that the word colored was not great, or that discriminatory practices extended to groups beyond African Americans. So, I was very excited to finally find that, and it helped me to confirm a story that has been shared around SWE, and it also helped me to understand SWE better. SWE hosted the first International Conference of Women Engineers and Scientists, or ICWIS, in 1964, in conjunction with the New York World's Fair. It was an audacious plan, because SWE was only 14 years old, and just 84 people had registered for its national convention a year before. Conference organizers were hoping for 300 attendees, but ultimately there were more than 500 registrants from 35 countries, and an additional 125 guests. Putting aside Cold War hostilities, attendees focused on the global challenges facing humanity, including food production, water supply, transportation, and energy, and they shared ideas on how to encourage women to pursue engineering around the world. We have the full collection of SWE's official publications. The first issue was released in 1951 as the Journal of the Society of Women Engineers, and it featured news about the society and technical articles by its members. The name changed a few times as the focus and intent of the publication changed, and since 1993 it has been called SWE, Magazine of the Society of Women Engineers. SWE's publications are such a valuable resource to learn not only about what the society and its members have done, but also to understand how their stories fit into the broader context of technological progress, of women's history, and of American and world history. Another great way to understand how the environment has changed for women engineers is through the archive's extensive collection of magazine and newspaper clippings, primarily from the 1950s through the 1990s. They're a great source to learn about both prominent and rank-and-file SWE members. And they also offer a fascinating look at how women engineers were perceived by society. As you move from mid-century to the late 20th century, you'll see headlines evolve from disbelief to wonder to declarations of triumph to recognition of glass ceilings. And you'll also see this 2010 Wall Street Journal article about how women in STEM from many different organizations, including SWE, successfully influenced Mattel's contest for Barbie's new profession, ultimately leading to the creation of computer engineer Barbie. In fact, we have her in the archives, in SWE's collection of artifacts, which includes pins, patches, buttons, Beatrice Hicks's medal from her induction into the National Women's Hall of Fame, and scrapbooks, among many other items. We also have a framed ceremonial copy of SWE's Resnick Challenger Medal, which is named after SWE senior member and NASA astronaut Judith Resnick, who perished aboard the shuttle Challenger in 1986. The medal in her honor was designed and sculpted by past president and fellow Arminta Harness. It has been awarded for visionary contributions to space exploration. I also have the medal that was awarded to Dr. Dunbar, which she took into space with her in 1998 on the shuttle Endeavour, and then donated back to the society. SWE has this large and rich archive documenting its history and the accomplishments of its members. But what are they used for? You'll spot the stories found in SWE's archives, in scholarly and children's books, in articles, on the radio, and in exhibits. One of the amazing things about SWE's archives is that scholars use them to understand so much more than just what the society has done. Reporters, authors, and scholars are interested in the lives of specific SWE members, and in how SWE's history intersects with issues related to education, the women's movement, technological progress, and national security. An English rhetoric scholar is using SWE's oral history interviews to study the stories women engineers tell about themselves and their work, and how they use those stories to open up possibilities for change. Within SWE, the archives are used in a variety of ways. They're used to support the Society's marketing initiatives and articles in the magazine, including the scrapbook on the last page of each issue. I dig into the archives to support internal and external award nominations, and to answer questions about membership history and past leadership positions. I do research to understand why certain policies or procedures were made in the past, to give current leaders a firm footing while directing SWE into the future. And on the lighter side, I've used the archives to create trivia questions and to help settle at least one happy hour bar bet. Sometimes the answers are easy to find, and sometimes they require a lot of digging and thinking of alternate ways to get at the answer when it's not where I expect or when the documents just weren't saved. If you want to know more about the Society of Women Engineers, its members, the history of women in engineering, and how that all fits in with everything else going on in the world, I am more than happy to search for that answer. Send me an email, give me a call, or you can even message me on Twitter. And in post-pandemic future times, if you're in Detroit, let me know. You can dig into SWE's history and these boxes here in the Reuther Library Reading Room. I hope you enjoyed this tour of the Reuther Library and are as excited about SWE's history and its archives as I am. We'll meet again next year, in person hopefully, at the Society of Women Engineers annual conference. Be well.